purpose of a business is to make a profit.
That's what it's supposed to do.
So if you're not making a profit, then you're not getting results, and then you're not really in business.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Solid Podcast. This is episode 35. Today, Brandon and I are going to talk to you guys about building an environment, whether that environment is in your house with your family, in a business, maybe you're an employee, but what can you do to make a positive environment and be the catalyst for success, results, and inspiration in other people's lives? Thank you so much for tuning in again today. If you guys will please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share. Please tag us. If this is inspiring you, if you're going to share it with others, tag us. We love to know the messages that have a positive impact on your guys' lives. Thank you so much for your support, and we look forward to continue to providing massive value. Remember, stay solid. Yeah, man, I'm excited about this event coming up too. I think, as we talk about environment and stuff like that, it's going to help a lot.
Yeah, I think anybody listening in, get a hold of us about this event. We got some details we're putting together for it right now, right? And it's going to be really good. All the things we covered on our last podcast, all the topics we're going to be going through, and we'll have to invite some guests in with us to speak that are really in tune with some of those topics. Yeah. We'll give a great overview, but we'll have people that specialize in maybe investments or like the heart-brain coherence stuff. That's just so. I'm learning about that more and more, and man, it's so powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
being able to walk in faith versus trying to control situations or control the outcome or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, faith versus fear, right? Ego versus spirit, heart. Yeah, exactly. It's so easy to lead with ego. It's like outward way, and then you go, okay, get my ego out of the way, and I can really connect with life. I can connect with you. I can connect with other people,
and just have peace in the moment.
Yeah,
I don't think it changes. I don't even think it changes the actions. It just changes the perspective, which allows you to actually have peace in that moment, right, and be present in the situation, whatever that situation is.
Yeah, I was showing you this book, Zero Limits. My sister-in-law just said, hey, you need to read this book. And that's what he talks about is you gotta almost, it's like when you have a computer and you delete it, where does it go? It goes to the recycle bin. Yeah. It's still there, right? Mm-hmm. You got to get it out of the recycle bin.
Yeah.
And we're no different. We have a memory. And it's important to learn from the memory, you know about it, but also there comes a time where you got to delete it. And so you can totally you have no expectations. Talks about how if you have an issue with somebody, they don't have the issue. You have the issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And you're not the victim. And if you can not have that victim mentality in life, man, you take control of your life.
Right. Exactly.
And that kind of sounds funny because we're talking about you're
not having control.
Not having control. And allowing it to happen.
But it's controlling your perception.
Yeah.
Of what's happening. So the ability to actually, to be in peace about the perception of it rather than. If you're in control, a lot of times it comes from that place of ego, like I'm going to determine this outcome versus the outcome is going to be a result of my perception of the current situation and then the actions that I take because of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's a perfect segue into environment we're going to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
It's because you have a garden and you've got to weed that garden, right? If you want to grow great fruit, there's things you're going to have to get rid of within that environment in order for, whatever you're trying to grow to thrive,
Yeah. Yeah, I think setting up the family portion of as we put together this event, and maybe we can start off with the environment we want to create in our homes, in our lives, with our wives, with our children. If you're a woman, with your husband, how do you create an environment where people are at peace? Yep. They can thrive. They feel strong. They feel safe. They feel like they've got the freedom to express themselves. They're not. I want my kids to come home and be able to share anything with us,
right,
and not feel judgment, and not feel like they're going to get in trouble first.
Right.
They might be in trouble, but hopefully they come and, I heard something recently, shame is when I'm in trouble, I'm going to avoid you, versus when I'm in trouble, I'm going to go to you is the opposite. And that's really like what the true gospel is, right? I'm like, I'm in trouble. I need to call my dad. I'm in trouble. I need to avoid dad.
Yeah, it reminds me of post. I don't know if you saw it that I posted the other day because, I was listening to, I probably listened to the Ryan and Caroline Lelf podcast, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. It was so good.
Really good.
Kelsey and I were having this conversation just about, I feel like so many people have these negative responses to religion in their lives, and whether that's because they were grown up in a super strict religious family, or they rebelled against it because they watched that strict religiousness, right? But either way, I see a lot of people have trauma on both sides of that.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I was kind of like the rebellious person, growing up in Southern Utah, and I would see, the way people treated me because my family wasn't LDS made me like push against it, right? And look for flaws and all this kind of stuff because I felt constantly judged or shamed or whatever because I wasn't brought up the same way as they were, right?
Mm-hmm. That's too bad. That shouldn't be the case, but yeah.
Right. And it's just the reality of, like, let's just face it, a lot of religion, right? And it brings a lot of trauma. So I was telling Kelsey, it's crazy because the more people I talk to and the more people I've been talking to about this podcast and the more people that have listened to it and reach out to me, so many people are like, hey, this is a common denominator I've found out. And this is part of environment, right? This is the environment that happens. Mm-hmm. And so I text my pastor in Las Vegas and I just said, hey, pastor, because I learned from him early on that I felt like, coming from Southern Utah, I felt like when I showed up to church, I had to like wear a suit, I had to dress a certain way. And they used to say, come as you are, just come as you are. And I'm like, yeah, right. They don't really believe that. Nobody really believes come as you are. Mm-hmm. And then I learned the whole philosophy of come as you are, but God loves you so much. He doesn't want to let you stay that way, so hopefully you love someone, you want to make them proud,
Sure.
And so I just texted him that and I said, hey, I feel like a lot of people have this trauma from religious rule, and I said, what would be your response to that? And he just said, laws bind men while grace frees them.
Really right? Good.
Just a simple, and then I responded, I knew you would have a graceful way to to respond to that, and pun intended, right? But it was true. Like, if you have an environment, back to your point, if you have an environment that I learned that if you can provide grace, right, which is, hey, we're going to make mistakes. None of us are perfect. But the environment that says we want you to grow within this environment, not feel judged because you did something wrong, but rather than we want you to come here and feel that you can grow within it and make mistakes but still get better.
Almost because you did something wrong, come,
Yes.
Like we want you with us. We want to help each other. And it's like when somebody I'm LDS, right? So a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. So, we don't believe in smoking and drinking alcohol, and we like to stay clean from all those things. But if somebody's a smoker, I sure as heck would hope they'd come to church.
Yeah.
But I think you're saying, unfortunately, sometimes maybe they think, well, I smoke, so I can't come to church, or I smell like smoke, so I can't go in that building.
Right.
When reality is that's exactly who we want to have coming to church.
Right. Exactly. Yep. So. Yeah, and creating that environment within our families or within our communities or even within our businesses.
Sure.
Where people feel like, and I feel like I've made mistakes on that side, like definitely in my business early on. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like I've done some great things in my business. And looking back on it, it's a lot easier hindsight, and that's how you learn and grow and progress. And so I think we've done a lot of great things on that side with business and some things that I regret and go, man, I wish I would have done that differently. But also with my family. Mm-hmm. One of the things this morning, Aspen, my daughter, she got in trouble over something dumb. And she goes into her room and she gets mad and she has those glow sticks and she's like mad. So she's like trying to break it. She breaks it, pops open and goes into her eye.
Oh, man.
So, she gets this chemicals in her eyes. She's freaking out. And this is like, all right, after we get her eyes washed out and stuff, we find out what it is and she can be just fine. And she gets done and we start talking about it and she goes, Dad, I know I was in trouble, but I know you still love me. And it was just like, man, like,
awesome.
I'm so glad that she understood that, and that, I guess it was intentional, but it felt so good for me as a dad to hear that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that was just, 45 minutes ago. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So I think it happens. in our lives where when we create these environments that there's good things that happen. But also I think creating those environments sometimes doesn't always feel the best at the beginning because you're making change, right? And that's a hard part about creating a positive environment. It's like, man, if it's supposed to be a positive environment, why does sometimes it feel so challenging, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think of just the lessons that I've learned through building a business too. When we're starting off to set an environment, let's say it's in our homes or whatever, starts off with our expectation, right? Like what expectations do we want to have? Do we want to set? And then how can we build an environment around that?
Right.
And I think there's different levels of expectations. Some people allow different things in their homes, and I'm learning more and more. Like I can't get away with being even a degree off, because if I'm a degree off, I get hammered.
Yeah.
Some people I think can. I think some people can be a degree or two off and still function good. But I'm learning more and more about myself. Like I got to like stay on the straight path as much as I possibly can. Whatever, the straight path for me might be different from somebody else. But I'm not trying to judge anybody. But like in our home, I've got a wife who has a very high standard, and there's been times I'm like, God, I don't know if I can live up to that standard. But the mistake I would make sometimes is I'm trying to live up to her standard, and that's not the standard I should be trying to live up to, right? I should be living up to God's standard,
right? And
all the other stuff will work out, right? Yeah. God's standard and what I feel is right there. And anyway, but I appreciate her example. It's kind of funny in our home. I'm more lax on things, but she is like, we won't even watch a PG-13 movie, let alone like that's how her standards are. And I'm grateful for that, and I think sometimes that comes across as, you think you're better than everybody else. No, that's not it at all. Yeah. I just think the world is so crazy out there and getting crazier all the time that it's even more important that we keep our standards. And I guess it's not true. We think about PG-13 when we watch Top Gun and stuff. So. Yeah. But anyway, you get the point.
To that point, I agree. And I do think expectations and standards are crucial. I also think it's important to know that en route to this desire doesn't mean you may not ever actually achieve that. You may not actually ever be perfect. And that's what grace is about, is just having the ability to realize that, hey, sometimes you're going to grow, like in the gym, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a goal to hit in that gym, you're going to fall. You might get injured on the way there. Right. It might set you back. And I always tell everybody, you have this destination of where you're trying to get to. And almost always the path which you think to get to that destination is never going to be the path that you're going to take. I was doing a coaching call with a guy the other day, and I told him, I said, we start talking about his goals, and I said, listen, when you set this goal, you're going to have this desired route in mind, but it's probably not going to happen. I said, for example, he's back east, and they're having that crazy storm, and I said, on the way home yesterday, did you take your normal route? He goes, no. I go, why? The road was closed. I go, so what did you do? Did you just give up and go, I can't get home? No, you chose a different route. Mm-hmm. You're still going to the same destination. It just didn't look the same way you thought it was going to look.
Yep.
Right. And so I think a lot of times when we set these standards, in my house, you say you don't watch PG-13. Honestly, in our house, we just don't watch electronics. Yeah. We seriously, I have a TV in my living room, but it's not plugged in. It does not turn on. Mm-hmm. And that's because, I just don't want my children influenced by outside things, and it's not that I want to shelter my kids, because me, I'm all about my kids, go run throughout the neighborhood, do whatever. But I know who lives in my neighborhood, and I chose to live in that neighborhood, right? And so if I don't like the surroundings of that neighborhood, then it's my job as a father to say, if I don't like the environment, I either have to change the environment or put them in a different one or something like that, right? And then allow them the freedom to grow within it, right? And no environment's going to be perfect, because it don't matter how perfect the garden is, weeds are still going to grow. Yeah. And we have to understand that, and then not allow anxiety or frustration to set in. Like in business, the same thing, right? You have these standards, and I always say when we moved up to Boise, the greatest thing ever happened to us was there really was no other big organizations around or big leaders around. So there was nobody else influencing our people, and people just thought the standards that we set were the standards. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it was like, you watch people like Casey. She exploded, right? She became the highest paid female in Primerica her first year as an RVP, almost not by accident, because it was very intentional in the work that she did, but it wasn't a goal. Like, she didn't set that as a goal. Like, hey, I'm going to become the highest paid female. It just happened because of the environment and the standards, and anything is possible. You can get as big as you want. And because of that environment, and then it influenced a lot of other people to do some incredible things. I mean, she changed a lot of women's lives in that process, but that was an environment, and the environment wasn't perfect, right? We none of us knew what we were really doing at the beginning, but then looking back on it, we're like, oh, what are some silver linings in that environment?
Yeah, environment and expectation. And when I say expectation, it's not like we learned very early on, you better not expect anything of anybody because just be disappointed. But there's got to be a level of expectation of what you're saying. For example, we use this analogy all the time too. Right? You bring a Chinese baby to the United States as a baby, and what does that baby end up growing up speaking?
English.
And we used to joke, say Spanish sometimes, right? But English most of the time, right?
Yep.
Because the environment and expectation in America is to speak English, right?
Yep.
So we take that same principle in our lives, in our homes with our children, and what's our expectation and what's our environment like in our home? And, you're talking about getting yourself into a position where you live in a great neighborhood with great neighbors. We've done the same thing. Worked hard to do that. I've been very fortunate to really grow up in great neighborhoods and been able to stay very fortunate to keep myself in those situations most of my life. I served a church mission where we weren't always living we lived amongst I would say in the world. Like we all want to be in the world, but not of the world.
Right.
And so everything we're talking about here can help us be equipped to be able to do that. And we can't control what everything is going on around us, but we can control what we allow inside,
Yeah, I would say, I just said this to my wife this morning. Literally, we cannot control what happens, but we can control our response to what happens. Mm-hmm. For example, I have all these people that send me all this stuff on Instagram constantly about, and she's like, hey, did you see this? And I go, no, I don't want to see it. She goes, why? And I go, because if I'm not going to go stand up and go change that thing, then how does it make my life better? Right? And if it doesn't make my life better, why do I want to consume that information? Because if it creates stress, anxiety, frustration, oh, I disagree with this. Yeah, I disagree. And if I'm going to actually stand up and go for some change, and there are some things I'm willing to speak out about and willing to stand up for, and I'm willing to understand the process I have to go through for change. And there are things that I'm willing to do that, but other things that I'm just not. It's not a battle I choose to fight, right? And so, I think when you're creating an environment, those expectations, you have to remember, like, all right, if you have these expectations, you have these desires, you have these goals, there is a certain environment you need to be in, right? Mm-hmm. En route to creating that, it might not be perfect en route. We're all going to make mistakes. But that's the learning process. That's the growth process. But then also, it's like, all right, if we're going to, especially in business, right? Our goal is to, we want these people to be successful. And so usually the people that we want to be successful aren't successful yet. And then we surround ourselves with a bunch of these people. And so you have to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. You have to be the person that sets the environment.
I just wrote that down right here. See? Thermostat, not, yeah.
Yeah, you do, right? You have to be a leader enough to say, like, no, this, rather than being influenced by those things, you have to be the influencer, which takes a lot of, mental toughness, staying focused, self-improvement, and these daily disciplines that people talk about constantly. That's why they're so important, is so that you can continue to be the one that sets the environment, sets the expectations, and sets the temperature, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I think getting yourself into a position where you're truly inspired. And when you're inspired, it's actually not a lot of work, because you know where you're supposed to be and where you're headed, and you got to get to that place, I guess. I'm trying to look in our home as we're raising our kids. I want them to be able to get to that place so that when they become adults, they know what they want to do. They have an idea of the direction they want to go anyway. They might not know what they want to do right away, but they can figure that out. I guess I would ask you, in your home, what are some things you guys do maybe on a weekly basis, daily basis, that you think set your family up or set your kids up to be able to go out and have peace in life, have success, go win big? What are some things you do? Because you do some pretty cool things, I think, as a family. Well,
thank you, dude. I appreciate that. And definitely not perfect. Sometimes I make mistakes and I'll get mad or something, like, man, I shouldn't have done that. However, some of the things that we try to do, I just try to be the best example I can be. Meaning that, if there are things that I make a mistake on, I'm okay with, telling my children, hey, I made a mistake here. Mm-hmm. Like I shouldn't have responded that way, or I shouldn't have done this. And just being vulnerable with them and whatever it was, and then as well as having conversations with them, things that I think are important for them to learn. Like, hey, did you notice this situation? Did you notice how I handled it? Or those kind of things. So I've said this about a home gym. I really think a home gym is a crucial thing, honestly. I'm a firm believer in working out at home. Now, I didn't know this and probably I didn't realize it until the last 2 years. But prior, to 2020, everybody knows what happened then. And you had all these lockdowns and stuff like that. Prior to that, we worked out at Lifetime. And it was awesome, man. I loved it. Incredible gym. It was expensive, but I loved it. Like, we spent a lot of time there. And probably, 3-4 hours a day, every day. My kids did swimming lessons at Lifetime. We would go take our friends to the pool. There was multiple restaurants, so we would go eat there constantly. We were working out there. But we would show up and we would put our kids, and they have, kid classes for 2-3 hours. And it was awesome, man. The kids would, they would do karate classes or rock climbing classes or Spanish classes or whatever, Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of fun. Our kids loved it. However, what I didn't realize my kids weren't seeing is the price that we were paying at the gym, right? And so now I realize that after that happened, we started working out at home, our kids all of a sudden started wanting to work out with us. And I didn't have to ask them to. I didn't have to say, hey, come out here into the gym. But now they started seeing our daily disciplines. They see us wake up in the morning, go out to the gym. Mm-hmm. And we go out to the gym, we get done with the gym, we get in the sauna, we go into a cold plunge. They see these things. So, like Kelsey's been posting our kids have been getting into the cold plunge. We've never asked them to. Mm-hmm. They ask us if they can. And that happens because they're watching our daily disciplines. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an important thing, just seeing that, them lean into doing hard things and realizing that I think fitness is an important thing because it's hard, it's uncomfortable. Goals. Our kids watching us read every day. They watch us read. They don't watch. Most families will go in and turn on the television. That's okay if they want to do that. They want their kids to do that. But we don't own game sets. We don't have an Xbox or a PlayStation. And I'm not against them. I just have never done that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So our kids see us, when we write down our goals, we say our affirmations, we read constantly. And we, like last night, one of the things we do every night is read scriptures as a family. And so our kids know these stories, and we'll read the stories, and then we'll talk about the stories. Like, what did you learn? How did it impact you? And then we'll notice those things are things that our kids want to do because of our example. So I think one of the things I've tried to do is be a person that my kids see this example so often that they start to ask if they can do it, rather than me have to try to push them to do that thing. Mm-hmm. They have a desire and ask, hey, can we do that with you? And whatever those things are, right? Yeah. But I also make mistakes too, right? Because, my battle in life has been anger. Mm-hmm. I've responded to everything. For a lot of years, I've responded to every problem with one tool. It's a hammer, and everything was a nail. Boom, handle it. Yeah. And so as I've gotten more mature, I realized, hey, there are different ways to handle other problems. And so having those communication tools with my kids, and I think that's what led to Aspen's comment today, is sometimes I just say, hey, listen, I don't handle everything correctly, but I want you to know I still love you, just because. And I'll tell you this, and another thing that my son, we were having this conversation last night, because my son has a very similar personality to me, which is like this. I'm intense. And I don't know where I got it from, but my son has it too. So I don't know. I don't know where it comes from, because my other two children don't have that. And, he got mad at his sister and responded in an incorrect way. And rather than getting mad, I just asked him, I said, hey, have you ever seen me respond that way to your mom? And he goes, no. And I didn't know what his answer was going to be. It was like a genuine question, right? Mm-hmm. And no, I don't respond. I said the reason why is because I love her and I respect her and I appreciate all the things she does. And so I just try to remember those things no matter how frustrated I get. And it hasn't always been that way, because I can't say I've always responded correctly to my wife, right? So I think those things. And I feel like it's helped build an environment where my children want to grow, they want to get better, and I don't have to try to push it on them either.
Yeah, that's really good.
How about you, man? I know, same thing. I mean, you talk about Lexi, she has high standards, and she always has, but so have you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we hopefully complement each other with the different ways we have those standards. In homeschool, you're doing homeschool as well. I think that's been actually a big thing in our home. Just the relationships that have been built with our kids and their mother, and then I'll do some lessons here in there also. I think it's good for our kids to see, oh, you do math too, and you help us with our language arts, or whatever you call it these days. And they see all that, and so very similar to a lot of the stuff you guys do. We do a lesson every night out of the scriptures, and we just try to. We should do better, I think, with eating a meal a day. I think that's something you do. Don't you do breakfast every morning?
I am fanatical. I am fanatical. Not just it's not an option for my family. We will eat breakfast and dinner together at the table. Yeah, not an option.
I think that's good. I like to make sure the house stays clean. It drives me crazy when it's a mess. And so, kids, the boys wake up. Hey, did you make your bed? No. How come you haven't made your bed? Just making sure those kind of things. I think those little tiny things like that too.
Just a tip on that I learned earlier. I read this book someone gave. In fact, Gurpreet Singh gave me this book early on. Before we had a child, she gave me this book. It was awesome. So grateful for people wanting to pour into us before we even had children.
Yeah.
And I remember I read this book, and it said, if you want your children to have a clean room, then rather than telling them just clean your room, is like show them what a clean room looks like. Mm-hmm. And naturally over time, they'll have that standard of a clean room, and then grow and increase upon it. And I have to say, Rome, you ever been...
that guy's meticulous.
Oh my gosh, he makes his bed every day. He cleans his room. I don't have to ask him to clean his room. He does. He'll take off his shoes walking into everybody's home because he doesn't want people walking in his room with shoes. Mm-hmm. But it started from that book. Yeah, so I think that's awesome, man. I think kids learning how to have discipline and clean up after themselves can be a rewarding process if we...
Yeah. And I think a tough one when you have kids, it can be a tough one, I guess, is diet, how you eat. Yeah. Lexi and I eat pretty dang good. But sometimes the kids, they just want to eat chicken nuggets and fries, and that's all that they ever want to eat. But what's kind of cool is, my boys, and even my not my oldest so much, but not Jersey so much, but Sailor, I'll be cooking an elk steak or just a steak, and they want a steak.
Yeah.
Or we're making tacos. By the way, before you leave, you got to make sure you get some. I'll give you some meat before you leave today.
Heck yeah, dude.
So I think that's big. How your kids see you eat, and they may not follow it all the time. They're still kids. They still like their sweets, and they still like to, my kids love ice cream and everything else. But for the most part, I think that's big. Just like your kids are seeing you work out all the time. My kids see that with us too. We're always working out, not necessarily always here, but they always see us doing something like that, or I'm going out on a mountain bike ride or something.
They realize fitness is important to you.
Yeah, just being healthy.
Do you have a conversation with them? Like, I have young kids, so they're 8, 6, and 4, and they'll see somebody overweight and they'll say something, right? And so then I have this. Have you ever had conversations with them? Because I just have a conversation like, hey, here's if you don't want that result, then here's what leads to that result, and then here's what leads to the result you do want. You ever have conversations with them like that?
We haven't. I'm trying to think of any specific examples where any of my kids have kind of pointed that out. Like, hey, that person looks like they're not very fit or whatever. Yeah. They just haven't. I don't know why. Yeah. I guess they just don't. But they're all my kids are fit. They are. They're all in good shape.
That's why I said that. Yeah, your kids are all in great shape.
That's a good question. Makes me think and wonder. Maybe they're thinking that and they just haven't brought it up. But because I think that's a great opportunity to teach, right?
Yeah.
And to not shame that person who's maybe out of shape right now, but say, listen, this is why we got to take care of ourselves. And because once you get out of shape, it's a lot harder to get back into shape.
Yes.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, those are, I mean, we do a lot of the similar things as you guys do. Just try to watch the language that we use, the people that come into our home, we allow good people in our home. We want good people in our home. I think those things help. Good examples, good for kind of watch who are our kids hanging out with. I've got a teenager now, so I got to watch, kind of pay attention to who she's making friends with, boys and girls, where she's working, what the work environment is like. She'll come home and tell us, things that happened and, positive and maybe not so good. And just watching all those type of things are good. I mean, Sailor, she's fanatical about doing dance and piano and just super disciplined. And it's exciting to see that. We're starting our jiu-jitsu stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's going to help a lot with just a new challenge. My boys, they did not want to do that, by the way. Like they already did karate, and for whatever reason, they were like that. Like the night before, Dodger was a little bit better than Bridger. But Bridger's like, I don't want to go, Dad. He wouldn't even fall asleep. Right? He's like so nervous about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, get up in the morning if you don't want to go. Just so I got him to go to bed, and the next morning he was good. He got up and we went. And I think they had a great time.
Yeah.
So I think all those types of things, man, they're teaching discipline, and I think looking at just how I want to fortify, and we can probably get into business environment next year, but just fortify my family. As I look at, I saw you post, I think Joe Rogan posted someone who was born in 1900, lived from 1900 to 1985 or whatever, right? And all the wars they went through and all the challenging times that they went through, and they were tough people and the greatest generation, all that stuff we hear about. And I agree, and I respect and admire them so much. And I know Joe Rogan said something like someone who was born from 1985 till now has no idea about those type of challenges and trials, which is true. However, I think today's world is much tougher than that, in the sense that the battle we fight today is a silent battle. Yeah. And it's kind of like Satan's got his special forces working under the scenes and you can't see it, but it's a spiritual battle. And I would think, and in fact, I know this. My grandparents used to tell me because they lived through World War II and all these wars, right? And they used to tell us this when it was our generation growing up. You're the toughest generation out there. You came at this time in the world because this is when God needed you on the earth. And I knew it was true. Mm-hmm. And now I'm looking at our kids, and I'm going, okay, we were raised to raise our kids. What a responsibility that is. Yes. For anyone who's listening in, if you have kids right now, man, we as adults have got to be paying attention, because our kids are getting hammered right now because of all the technology and social media and just the environment and what's accepted in the world today, which there's always been that stuff that's been accepted through history. Yep. It's just that now it's so loud.
So easily influenced upon children because of technology.
I think so. Yep. I mean,
and I try not to say, I'll be honest with you, I try not to say, oh, our time's easier or harder than the past. Our time is the time that we're here. And so I try not to compare. I just try to look back. And I also think that the mistake a lot of people make is only looking back till 1900, right? One of the things I love about like Ray Dalio, for example, if you haven't read his book, you should read his newest book is called The New World Order. Yeah. Interesting title.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's an important book because he talks about investing. Like so many people look at this thing, oh, here's what happened in the market in the last 10 years or 30 years. But the reality is there's been markets for thousands and thousands of years, public markets. Mm-hmm. And if we only look at this, it's like even if we look at America's history, it's really looking at the world like through a straw. Mm-hmm. And so how can I have this big perspective if I'm trying to compare a small little blip in time to a small little blip in time? You can't really see it. Mm-hmm. So I've always tried to have this like, hey, just what can I learn from these different periods or different generations? Because I really do think perspective is everything.
Yeah. Different versus harder is probably a better way to say it. It's different. Maybe not necessarily. It's harder in different ways.
Yeah, I definitely knew what you meant. I just think as people listen, sometimes people will take our words like, you said this,
exactly,
like, well, this is live. I don't have anything written in front of me.
Sure.
We're just, this is, so I think that's an important thing. And then looking at, far enough back. So I think, I totally agree with you that the battle our children face, the battle we face on a daily basis is hard because, it's one of the things I tell everybody, if somebody wants to change somebody else's actions, it's actually pretty easy. For example, if you're sitting on a bench and you're in the middle of the bench and I sit right next to you, normally as a human, what do? Scoot over just to give a little bit more space. So if I scoot over a little bit closer, you'll scoot over. Before you know it, you'll be sitting on the end of the bench. And then you can go, hey, will you scoot over a little bit? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. And then I go back to the middle of the bench and I was where you were and you still have the space you thought you needed. But you're at a totally different spot. And that's what happens to people who understand human behavior and psychological responses. And so if we understand the battle that ourselves and our children are facing, this is why, they say, I'm not going to give you an inch. That's like where these philosophies come from. And so if we can realize when you talk about fortify, which means strengthen our opinions, I think strengthening our opinions, our perspective, our stances doesn't mean we have to act a different way towards others. It just means we're not moving from the thing that we know is important, right? And it doesn't mean I'm not willing to question. We talked about this, question those beliefs, because I'm willing to question it all. And if I'm not willing to question it, it's not a belief. So if I am willing to question it, it should strengthen it if it is a true belief.
Yep.
Right. And so, I think with our children today, they do face a very, very tough battle. I think we face that same battle. And that's why I love Solid and what we're doing, getting ready to do this event, because we need to create more warrior spirits where people say, listen, in the event, I need to have these tools or these perspectives, or there's a group or a community that can help me continue to fortify these, right? And where do I go to find those people? I was talking to a friend on the way here about he has a son who's battled with addiction. And he linked him up with a friend of ours that has also had a battle with addiction and overcome it, and has been very, very successful in overcoming this battle. And that friend we have that had a lot of influence over this man's son told him, said, listen, the most important thing you can do, you've done good and he's doing great. He's overcome the battle. But he goes, if you want to overcome the battle long term, if you want to win this war, you have to put yourself amongst warriors who have also been in the same battle that will hold you accountable to those things.
That have overcome the battle, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that's why it's so important to have community, this community that you're in. And I'm so excited about these Solid workshops, because if you're in a community of people that are like-minded, then you have the ability to go there and a lot of times be reminded. There's a saying that says people need reminded more than instructed. I think people need reminded and instructed, right? It's like, hey, remind me. Oh, yeah, how do I do that? Oh, yeah, how do I do that? Because we're not going to catch everything, It's like Bill Whittle used to say, if we're going to give you a lot of information tonight, it could be like drinking out of a fire hydrant. It's dangerous if you try to get it all. So just take what you can get and come back next week, know?
Right.
So anyway, I think it's crucial when you talk about, fortifying our families and realizing what's happening in the world today. It's a different battle, but it's no different than a battle that somebody in the past fought,
Yep. Same fundamentals apply, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the game of football has changed quite a bit over the years as far as the plays that are made and the way that plays are structured to start it off. But the game itself is still the game of football, right?
Yes.
But the fundamental, the rules of the game and all that are still there. It's still the same game.
Yep.
So maybe we should talk a little bit about just business environment and whether you are the owner of a business, maybe you work within a company, maybe you're one of the employees at a company, and you want to create a great environment there. So what do you think to kind of kick things off? Let's say, I mean, I know how we did it in our business, but I mean, where do you start with that? Where do you start when you come into a business, and what kind of environment do you want? How do you create that environment? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, you can go so many directions with that, right? I think the first thing is just knowing, like, what are the results that you desire, because those results are going to take a certain kind of people. They're going to take a certain kind of skill set. They're going to take a certain kind of environment, and then that environment is going to attract a certain kind of person. And here's another thing I think a lot of people make a mistake is people always have these polar positions, like you have to be this or you have to be that or everybody should do this. Like when it comes to investments, you get on social media and, there'll be one person say, real estate is the only thing you should invest in. Everything else is stupid. And I'm like, I disagree, right? I think real estate is a phenomenal place to invest some money, but there are also a lot of other incredible places to invest money. It just depends on the outcome that you're trying to get, right? What are you trying to accomplish? And so I think you have to first know what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Like what are we trying to build?
Yep. Okay.
And so it was there was a guy I saw the other day, he posted and he said, listen, if you want to get wealthy, you're never going to get wealthy being an employee. It's just never going to happen. And I just responded, I said, I appreciate your content, but I politely disagree. I humbly disagree that you cannot get wealthy. Now, it is the hardest chance, right? It's the least, you have the least odds to get wealthy as an employee, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. So if your goals are to get wealthy and you understand you're choosing the hardest route, then you can still be an employee and get wealthy. I said, look, I think there's 10 billionaires in America. that started as an employee and are still employees and they're billionaires. Now, there's only 10, right? Well, I mean, still $1 billion, right?
Yeah, right.
But out of all the employees, you think about how many employees are in America, how many of them became billionaires. It is the hardest route. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean you can't do it, right? There are other people who did it. But if your goal, if that is your goal to say, hey, I want to become a billionaire, I don't care how I do it, then you start looking at, okay, if that's the goal, what path should I take? Well, probably entrepreneurship is the best path if you don't care how you get there, right? But if you're the kind of person that says, man, I love my career and I don't want to change my career, and someone talks to you and says, well, don't you have to leave that career to provide a good financial life for your family. And I've made this mistake in the past. I'm totally transparent. This is why I've starting to think about how can I have a positive impact and influence on other people's lives versus trying to change other people's perspective to meet mine. Because if I really want to have a positive impact, I should really look at what are their goals and how can I use my knowledge and influence to help them achieve their goals rather than getting their goals to become mine, right? So I think when it comes to an environment and you want to build a great environment as a business, whether you're an owner or you're just in, when you have to know, okay, what are your goals? What are you trying to create, or what is the outcome you're trying to get from this specific endeavor?
Good. Yeah, I agree. And I think, any business out there, if you're not getting results, your business isn't going to move. And so part of the culture that I've always wanted to create or focused on is result producing activity, whatever business you're in, So in our financial business, for example, that was, on a daily basis, my top priority every day. And I started this, right? I wanted to create a culture where people came in and we got results, because results, when it comes down to it, what are results in business? It's making profit.
Yep.
That's really the purpose of a business, is to make a profit.
That's what it's supposed to do.
So if you're not making a profit, then you're not getting results, and then you're not really in business.
Right.
And so that was always my top priority every day, was I needed to do result producing activity, which was prospecting for an appointment, because on an appointment is where everything would happen. That's where I would make a presentation. That's where I'd do a financial plan. That's where we would, implement the strategies that I had to close.
Closing. Yeah. You have to be in front of a prospective buyer every single day if you expect to get results daily, right?
Yep. So that might, so if you're in marketing right now, is your marketing leading to somebody putting a credit card in to make a purchase of the product or service that you're selling, right? Yep. That needs to be top priority. Now, there's always things you're trying to do to innovate and make your business run smoother or better. But those things, in my opinion, should come after you focus on the results for the day, right?
Yep.
So on a daily basis, if I wasn't on at least 2 qualified appointments a day, almost nothing else mattered. I still needed to do my reading and my self-improvement and my follow-up with my people and my coaching and all that.
Adding new prospects to the list.
I still needed to do all that. But if I wasn't personally out there getting those results initially to maybe establish a blueprint for what I wanted to duplicate, I was creating the wrong culture. I mean, the culture in our office, you remember this, was, first of all, you'd come into our office and there was an energy about it, right? There was a really results-oriented energy, not like high pressure, but exciting. It was like, we win.
Yeah, nobody had to tell anybody that we're winning.
Yeah. I mean, people were winning.
Feel it.
You could feel it. It was motivating, exciting. And it's because, I got results personally and showed how to get results and made money, and then showed other people how to actually make money. So, because what wears my butt out is trying to hype somebody up on fluff.
Whatever, yeah.
And
you did a phenomenal job, dude, of teaching us the numbers to understand that if we have a certain expectation, then here's the input that needs to go into it. And if you're not getting the result, it's because you're not putting enough of that results-oriented activity to get the result. You said ending up on 2 appointments a night, but there was a reason for that. That's because, in our numbers, it was like if you ended up on 8 appointments with qualified people, you're going to close 3 sales. So if you wanted to do 10 to 12 sales a month, which was like the expectation, that was why you needed to end up on 2 sales, because one of those nights we had a meeting.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So out of the 5 nights a week, then 4 of those nights we should end up on 2 appointments. But you also did a good job of teaching, hey, listen, appointments are going to cancel or reschedule. So you need to have at least 4 set, because then we knew how many we're going to reschedule. So if you have 4 set, your odds are you're going to end up on 2. And if you end up on 2 4 days a week, odds are you're going to close 3 sales that week, 12 sales a month, and you're going to hit this expectation or the standard. Right. And so if you're not hitting the standard, don't beat yourself up. Go back and look at what is the activity that is results-oriented activity, right? Such as the only thing that really mattered for us was getting in front of those qualified people, right? Married, own a home.
And we made it fun.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where if you weren't on an appointment at night and you got caught not being on an appointment at night, that was like worse than getting caught with your pants down in public, right? And it was fun, you know, and then so on Saturday training, we do our Saturday morning training or whatever, we'd all be there because we wanted to be there. And by the way, we did training. We created an environment so fun and so exciting. We did training at flipping 7 a.m.
Yep.
And we did a 3-hour training.
Yeah.
And I'd get comments every Saturday after the training. That does not feel like 3 hours. Like church is 3 hours. This church seems forever. This was seemed like an hour, right?
Yep.
And it's because we created that culture of we got results. People knew when they showed up, they were going to get value. And so that's something too, when you're creating an environment in your business, you've got to be providing value to your people so they want to be there or be around that environment or be involved, right?
I think that is crucial what you just said, because when I started business, I was young, and here I was, we opened up our own office. I was 21 leading people that were 40, 45, 50 years old quitting their jobs. And one of the things I learned early on is the way that I can have people follow me and continue to follow me is by them seeing that I continuously was providing more value. One of the things I've always said is, listen, if you're hungry and you go to the refrigerator and there's nothing to eat, then they're probably not going to go back to that refrigerator, right? So the same thing, if someone's hungry for success and they come to me and I have no value to provide, I can't expect to retain that person and expect them to come back. Yeah. So if they're hungry for success and they come to me and I have value to provide and I can give them something that they can use to achieve their goals, then odds are they're going to come back for more. Right. And it's my job to continue getting better, not their job. It's not their job to continue getting better. I can't control their desire. So good. I can only control my willingness to continue providing more value.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Absolutely. That's why people come to, I don't mean to sound like a commercial, but they come to our workshop. There will be tangible things you can take away from that and implement day one that will, I believe, immediately change your life for the better.
No doubt.
And even like our experience, we're going to do a shooting. This first one, we're going to do a shooting day.
Yep.
Long range shooting day with rifles. We got some kick butt rifles you're going to be able to use, and we're going to shoot a lot. We're going to shoot a lot of targets. We're going to shoot a long distance. We're going to shoot different positions. We'll do some drills. So those that actually decide they want to be a part of that experience on that Saturday, they're going to get a ton of value as far as you're even if you're never going to shoot much or hunt much or anything. It's not about that. You're going to gain a lot of confidence. I learned something new, and holy cow, a lot of people, they've never shot something at 500 or 600 yards. And we're going to teach them how to do that within a couple hours.
Yep.
And they're going to go, whoa, and if I can learn how to do that, what else could I maybe learn how to do, right?
That's the key. Yeah, that belief that says, if I can learn something that I never thought I could do in that short amount of time, my belief level skyrockets because, man, what could I accomplish? Yeah. Right? What is possible? And the reality is anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you believe it, right?
And we may do some ice bath stuff, not to intimidate anybody. We might do some ice baths and do some of those things that maybe no one's ever really tried a lot of that either, right? Especially at 40 degrees. There's a difference between, I'll do it here at my house in my cold bathtub. I don't think it's 40 degrees. It's probably, I don't know what it is. 55, 60. Yeah. So 40 is a new level, right? Like we go to that True North place and it's painful at 40.
Yeah.
Right. That's a cold.
But it also, what I tell everybody, listen, it never gets comfortable. And this is a good thing with environment, because these things that we do, like for me, prospecting, it never got comfortable. Right. But it was like, if you do hard things long enough, it's not like I get in the cold. I get in the cold every day, and never once do I go, I can't wait to get in that cold. It's all right, here I go, because I can't wait to feel.
Just get in there.
I can't wait to feel the way I feel after I'm done. Oh. But I can't feel that way if I'm not willing to go through this situation, just be mentally tough enough to just approach it. Like, all right, here I go.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it when you post a picture and it's 40 degrees outside, and then you're jumping because that's not easy, man.
No.
When it's cold, you're like, I don't want to get colder. I'd rather get in a warm
exactly.
bathtub.
Yeah, and I work out in my garage. Yeah, sometimes it might be 25 or 30 degrees in my garage, and it's outside temperature is actually colder than the water I'm getting in, and you know, I'm sure my neighbors think I'm nuts.
So what if you come into an environment and the environment isn't a winning environment? Maybe you're at a job and people are just like negative, or maybe you come into like in our former company, a base shop, and the environment, maybe it's not really results oriented. They're not getting a lot of results. What can you do? Because I've been there. I've been in that position. Mm-hmm. What can you do to still win in an environment like that? And maybe we talk about the thermostat, become the thermostat in that environment. Even if you're not the leader, what do you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say thank you because you were in that environment, but I was blessed enough not to be, right? Because I was, I entered your environment since day one. It was winning, and it gave me this massive amount of expectations, beliefs. I saw it, So thank you for that because, man. I don't know how I would have responded because I know how you responded, right? But I don't know, we do have totally different personalities, so I don't know how I would have responded. It's hard to say, but I'm grateful that I was recruited into your organization. However, I think anywhere, it doesn't matter if you have a job. One of the things I used to tell people when they joined our organization, say, listen, what happens to a lot of people when they join our organization is they start hating their jobs. They start realizing, man, I can't wait to get out of my job. I want to quit. I want to leave. I go, but the worst thing you could do is start underperforming because the one thing you can never change is your credibility, right? Your credibility is the thing that is earned. You can't buy it. It is something that over time is just a result of your actions. Mm-hmm. And so you have to earn credibility. It's earned. Yeah. And it takes a long time. So I tell people, if you have a job and you don't like your job and you want to get out of your job, what I challenge you to do is work harder, show up earlier, stay later, be more positive, get more results, whatever that job is. Be the hardest working person
Which is the opposite of what probably the normal person would do if they know they're on their way out.
Yes.
Right?
Because, I would argue to say that most, like probably in the high 90s percentage-wise, want to leave their job and they start underperforming. Mm-hmm. But what it does to everybody around them is they're like almost glad when you leave. Mm-hmm. It's like about time because everybody felt like they were picking up their slack. Don't you want to be so valuable that if you left, they go, man, where are they going? I want to be a part of whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. Because this is how you start becoming attractive, right? And then you attract people through your example. You retain people when they find out that thing that you were showing. This is why a lot of people on social media, it's all fake because once people realize who they really are, they see their social media and they're like, it's not even real. Yep. So they have a hard time retaining people. But when you attract people because it's actually who you are, you retain them and then they open themselves up to be influenced. Mm-hmm. And that's really, if you're a leader, whether you have a job or you own a business, you want people to get into a place where they allow you to influence their lives. Yep. And it's hard to earn that from other people, and it should be hard, right? It should be. And so, I think being attractive by showing up early, staying late, whatever, like you told me, I'll never forget this, man. Early on, you recruited me, and you said, Jeff, if you can do the things that take no talent, you'll beat everybody. Mm-hmm. And I go, like, what's that? And you go, show up early, stay late. I go, I can do that. You go, nobody does it. Nobody does it. They do it when it's convenient. They do it when it's comfortable, but they don't do it long term.
Right.
If you can never miss a meeting, if you could just commit right now, we know when they are. You can plan it out years in advance, right? It's already planned. And I learned this. This taught me commitment, which bred credibility because, like, I had something planned out 2 years, so something couldn't come up 3 months from now, and I go, hey, Brandon, I can't come to the meeting because something came up.
Something already came up.
Yes, something was already there. I already had a commitment, right? I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Right.
And so, I think those kind of actions that you take, they breed credibility. And when you have credibility because you are leading, then people start going, oh man, how can I start performing like them? It is inspirational. Mm-hmm. So whether you have a job or you have a business, because obviously I learned those things from you, but how did you learn those things? Because obviously you weren't in this high performing, high discipline environment. Like, where did you start realizing that those things were going to separate you?
I did learn, just growing up as a teenager, working construction in the summers, and then working like jobs. I worked at a Chinese restaurant for a while.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I did, Xinhua in Sandy, Utah. And I worked there, and my whole programming from my parents was just be the hardest working guy there. So every job I had, I just really wanted to be that hardest working person. And I think what I learned and what I caught, I didn't realize I caught it at the time. But looking back on it, I realized I think that because of my attitude and my hard work, I raised everybody else up with that. And it created a better environment in those areas, even though I was a young kid.
Rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah. And so that's why as we're kind of talking about this, like for me, when I started my financial business, I was in a good office. Brennan Merton's Bay Shop was doing pretty dang good. I mean, his income was on the upswing, and he's building his business and all that. But I was this young 22-year-old, and the other 20 to 22, 25-year-olds just weren't that focused. So I learned very quickly I can't just get involved with that same. I don't want to be part of that.
Can't be one of the boys.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be one of the boys. Exactly. It's exactly right. And so I just really started to listen to audios of leaders in the company, specifically Hector Lamarck, on how to build the business. He taught exactly how to do that. And then what I did is I created my own world in my mind, and it was my business, and I was going to be the leader of my business regardless of what bay shop I was in.
Sorry to cut you off, but I think that mentality right there will help anybody regardless of where they're at.
Mm-hmm. It will, yep.
If you're an employee and you start treating it like it's your own. You ever show up to a restaurant like 20 minutes before they close and they go, sorry, we're closed. I'm like, you don't close for 20 minutes. Really what that means is we don't want to stay late to clean up after you. Mm-hmm. But the owner, if it was the owner there, they go, come on in.
Absolutely.
We're grateful that you're here. We're going to treat you like gold. And what happens if you start treating the business you work in like that, then the owner knows that you're irreplaceable, that the odds of that business succeeding long-term because of you is very high compared to the odds of them not succeeding. And then you find employees mad that want to raise, but then you closed early.
Yep.
So I think that's such a valuable lesson.
You gain a lot of respect from those who are your leaders or your bosses or whoever, so that if and when you do leave and somebody calls for a reference, hey, how was Jeff at this, at this position? They go, man, we hated to see him go. He was like our clutch employee. Yeah. Like you should have no questions about how. That's the kind of conversation you want to have people talk about you like, right?
Yeah, isn't that the person we all want to be known as?
Absolutely.
If anybody calls us and asks about them, we're like, please call everybody you know to ask about us.
And it's not that tough to be that person in today's world. You just do all the things that don't take talent really well. Be positive, smile, be personable, come in. I mean, I loved coming into like Discover Card. We were on call centers, right? Like it can't get any more boring than being in a call center doing collections on bills. And I'd come into our cubicle area and I'd liven it up, man. I made fun. I started joking around and out collecting everybody. Hey, I just got another one. How'd you do, right? Yeah. And I didn't do it exactly right all the time, but I collected up more than pretty much everybody else.
Yep.
And that when it really came down to it, they'd say, hey, you kind of did this wrong, or you talked to this customer the wrong way, or you're not supposed to tell the customer you're going to put them in chargeback yet or what I can't remember what it's called, charge off yet. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, did I get the check?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they would punish me but thank you for collecting, right?
It's funny because I can tell that you had fun too, and I think the culture that I got recruited into, we had so much fun competing, and we'd joke around, and and I know people from the outside don't perceive you as that person, Oh,
yeah.
But you are. You have a lot of fun in the things you decide to do, and I think I've always had so much fun. If I'm not going to have fun, I'm just not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's another thing is you got to find a way to have fun in doing things that are hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think competition is an important element, a healthy competition. And I'm competitive. I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to be the top performer. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think just again, coming into an environment that's not what you want it to be, you become the environment. Yep. And just play your game. Your perception is your reality. And what'll start to happen is what'll happen? One or two things will happen. Either the people that are there around you will change and become more like you, or they'll leave. And you'll attract new people in their place.
Yeah.
So you don't have to try to fire somebody or let someone else go necessarily, right? You might need to do that if you have a business where you're paying somebody and they're not producing, of course.
Got to pick weeds.
You got to pick weeds, right? But if you're in a business like our business, we didn't have to fire people, which is really nice. Yep. We just had to create a great environment, and the people that weren't a good fit just went away.
Yeah. It's that whole philosophy of feed the sheep and the goats will starve.
And I think that's how life is, right?
Yeah.
If we are doing the right thing and creating the kind of environment, we attract everything we are. Mm-hmm. So if you have some things in your life that you don't like right now, you're attracting that, whether you realize it or not. You need to become aware. I need to become aware. Okay, I don't like this in my life. I'm aware. What did I do to attract this?
Yeah.
And what do I need to tweak so that thing goes away?
Yeah, because you only see things that your mind perceives value of, right? If your brain doesn't perceive value, you just won't see it. It's that whole philosophy. You go buy a red car, all of a sudden everybody has that same red car. They were always there. You just didn't see it before,
right.
Because there's so much stimulus in the world. Our brain knows what to tune out and what not. But as soon as something becomes valuable, all of a sudden we notice it, right?
Sure.
And so, knowing like, all right, why did I place value on that thing that didn't actually produce value in my life?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then learning to just change that perception.
Yep.
Right? Which a lot of times is from leading that heart, the leading from the heart and realizing, all right, the things that feel good usually are good, and it doesn't have to always be this like, we talk a lot about fighting for your goals and dreams, and yeah, it might be a fight, but it doesn't have to feel like a fight. It doesn't have to be this adrenaline stress response to it, rather than could be this thing we can't wait. It's almost like a race, like you're getting started at the beginning of a marathon or, triathlon like you've done, it's going to be a fight to get to that finish line. But
sure.
you're not like, it's not negative stress, right? It's like this excited, it comes from a different place, but it actually is the same. It's the same fight.
It is. It is. So good, man. Well, I'm excited, dude. I'm excited about what we got going on here and really creating a great culture and environment in the world with this solid movement. And I think if we can get a bunch of people to kind of become a part of this, there's a lot of you out there that listen that I think could really help perpetuate these great messages.
Absolutely. Yeah, just helping people create this solid spirit, right? That we can be great examples, and other people will allow us to influence them in their lives if we are, and that will continue to spread and create a movement, really, which is exciting.
Amen.
Regardless of whether or not they're a business owner, an employee, a mom or a dad, or even kids for that matter, right? Just creating that environment we're proud of, and we look back on and go, man, so glad that we did that because it influenced the world in a positive way.
Right.
So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Well, yeah, we'll keep plugging away at this, and we got some good guests coming up here in the next couple months.
I'm fired up about it. Yeah, we got some incredible people coming on that are really just, I think, going to take away all excuses and really just make people realize that this year will be the greatest year of their life, and hopefully we can be a small part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, man. Cool.
Awesome. Appreciate you.
You too.